When the Galactic Council learned Earth's real name, fear gripped the galaxy. Part 1: The Newcomers. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a monument to cooperation and peace that had lasted for over 50,000 years. Inside its curved walls, representatives from more than 4,000 intelligent species gathered to discuss matters of trade, law, and mutual protection. On this particular day, the hall buzzed with curious whispers. A new species had been discovered on the far edge of the galaxy. They called themselves humans, and they had somehow developed faster than light travel without any outside help. This alone made them interesting. Most species needed thousands of years of guidance before they could travel between stars. These humans had done it in less than 2 centuries. Ambassador of the People watched the main display screen with her 4 crystalline eyes. She was old by her species standards, having served on the council for nearly 300 years. She had seen many new species join the galactic community. Most were eager and frightened. Some were proud and difficult. A few were dangerous and had to be contained. She wondered which category these humans would fall into. The screen showed a small silver ship surrounded by council patrol vessels. It was a simple design, functional rather than beautiful. The hull showed signs of radiation damage from their primitive engine technology. Felt a small wave of sympathy. These creatures had crossed the vast emptiness of space in that tiny metal box. They were either very brave or very foolish. Commander stood on the bridge of his ship and tried to keep his hands from shaking. He was 42 years old, a veteran of the United Earth Exploratory Fleet, and he had trained his entire life for this moment. First contact with alien life, the biggest event in human history, and he was the one standing at the front. His crew of 47 men and women worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Lieutenant Maria Santos managed communications. Chief Engineer Moore monitored the struggling engines. Science Officer Diana analyzed the alien vessels that surrounded them. They were all professionals, the best Earth had to offer, was proud of every single one of them. The alien ships were enormous compared to their own vessel. Each one was at least 10 times larger, with smooth curves and glowing energy fields that suggested technology far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Counted 15 of them, arranged in a perfect sphere around his ship. If they wanted to destroy him, he would not even have time to blink. The communication screen flickered to life. Found himself looking at a creature that resembled a giant insect. It had 6 limbs, compound eyes that reflected the light in rainbow patterns, and mandibles that clicked together as it spoke. The universal translator that Diana had hastily programmed did its best to convert the sounds into English. "Unknown vessel," the creature said, "you have entered Galactic Council protected space. Identify your origin world and state your intentions." Took a deep breath. He had practiced this speech 1,000 times. "I am commander of the United Earth Exploratory Fleet. We come from a planet called Earth, located in what we call the Sol system. We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge. We mean no harm to anyone." The insect creature studied him for a long moment. Its compound eyes made it impossible to read any emotion on its face. Finally, it spoke again. "Earth, Sol system, we have no record of these names. You will follow us to the council for evaluation. Do not resist. Do not attempt to flee. If you cooperate, you will not be harmed." Nodded slowly. He had no choice in the matter. His ship was outnumbered and completely at their mercy. "We understand. We will cooperate fully." The journey to the council took 17 days. During that time, and his crew were treated with polite curiosity. Scientists from various species visited their ship to study their technology. Medical experts examined their biology. Linguists worked to improve the translation systems. Everyone was professional and courteous, but could not shake the feeling that they were being viewed as interesting animals rather than equals. The Council was a planet of endless cities and constant activity. Ships of every imaginable design filled the skies. Beings of every possible shape walked the streets. Saw creatures made of living crystal, beings that floated on fields of magnetic energy, and organisms that seemed to exist partially in dimensions he could not perceive. It was overwhelming and humbling. The humans were brought before the full Galactic Council, stood alone on a small platform in the center of the Great Hall, surrounded by thousands of alien faces. He explained Earth's history as best he could. He spoke of their wars and their struggles, their art and their science, their hopes and their dreams. He answered questions for nearly 12 hours until his voice was hoarse and his legs ached from standing. High Counselor observed the proceedings from his elevated position. He was an ancient being, one of the oldest in the galaxy. His physical form was pure energy contained within a shell of living crystal. He had seen countless species rise and fall. He had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of worlds. These humans, he thought, were rather unremarkable. Their technology was primitive. Their bodies were fragile. They were laughably short. They had potential, perhaps, but nothing that set them apart from dozens of other young species that had been welcomed into the galactic community. After the questioning was complete, the Council voted on the matter of Earth's membership. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would be granted provisional status in the Galactic Assembly. They would be given access to basic technologies and assigned a trade route in a quiet sector of space. In a few thousand years, if they proved themselves worthy, they might be elevated to full membership. It was considered an act of charity, a kindness extended to a species that would never amount to anything significant. Thanked the Council for their generosity. He shook hands with Ambassador, who seemed genuinely pleased to welcome them. He smiled for the recording devices that would broadcast this moment across the galaxy. And through it all, he kept his thoughts to himself. The humans had been judged and found wanting. They were seen as harmless curiosities, primitive creatures who posed no threat to the established order. Understood this. He accepted it, but deep in his heart, he also knew something that the Council did not. Humanity had been underestimated before. It had never ended well for those who made that mistake. The humans returned to their ship and began the long journey back to Earth. They carried with them gifts of technology that would advance human civilization by centuries. They carried knowledge of a vast galactic community that humanity could now join. And they carried the quiet determination that had driven their species from caves to the stars. The galaxy had no idea what it had just invited into its midst, but it would learn. In time, it would learn. When the Galactic Council learned Earth's real name, fear gripped the galaxy. Part 2. The Archives Speak. Great Library of the Galactic Council was the largest collection of knowledge in the known universe. It occupied an entire moon that had been hollowed out and filled with data storage systems of every possible type. Crystal matrices held information from species that had died out millions of years ago. Quantum computers preserved the scientific achievements of civilizations that had ascended beyond physical form. Biological memory banks contained the complete histories of 10,000 worlds. Historian had served in the Great Library for 3,000 years. He was a member of the Archivists Guild, a group dedicated to preserving and organizing all knowledge for the benefit of the galaxy. His species, were naturally suited to this work. They had perfect memory, infinite patience, and a deep love of order and classification. When the humans arrived, did what he always did when a new species was discovered. He searched the archives for any previous record of their world. This was standard procedure. The galaxy was old, and many species had risen and fallen before the current council was formed. Sometimes, a new discovery turned out to be the descendants of a long-lost civilization. Sometimes, it revealed hidden connections between species that had never known of each other's existence. Entered the coordinates of Earth's star system into the search interface. He added the physical characteristics of the planet, size, gravity, atmospheric composition, orbital period. He included details about the dominant species, bipedal, carbon-based, warm-blooded, oxygen-breathing. The initial search returned nothing. This was not unusual. Many species had no prior record in the archives. Was about to close the file when something caught his attention. The search had flagged a partial match in a restricted section of the database. The classification level was the highest possible, requiring authorization from the High Council itself. Frowned. In 3,000 years of service, he had encountered restricted files only a handful of times. They usually contained information about dangerous technologies or extinct civilizations that had destroyed themselves in terrible ways. What could a small, primitive species like humans have to do with such serious matters? His curiosity was too strong to ignore. Submitted a formal request for access to the restricted files. To his surprise, the request was immediately. This had never happened before. The Archivists Guild had standing permission to access almost any information in the library for research purposes. Now truly intrigued, began searching through secondary sources. He looked for references to the restricted file in historical documents, scientific papers, and diplomatic records. Slowly, piece by piece, he began to assemble a picture of what lay hidden in those sealed archives. The more he learned, the more frightened he became. The world that humans called Earth had another name, an ancient name that had been deliberately erased from all public records. The ancients had called it Terra Prime. They had also called it the. His tendrils trembled as he accessed older and older documents. He found references to Terra Prime in texts that dated back over 200,000 years. The descriptions were terrifying. Terra Prime was a world of constant danger. Its gravity was higher than galactic average, forcing its inhabitants to develop strong muscles and dense bones. Its star bombarded the surface with harmful radiation, driving the evolution of rapid cellular repair. Its atmosphere contained a corrosive gas that most species found deadly, but that the natives had learned to not only tolerate but require for survival. The planet experienced violent storms, extreme temperature variations, and regular geological catastrophes that would have wiped out most species entirely. But the true horror was not the planet itself, it was what had evolved there. The natives of Terra Prime were called Terrans. They were pursuit predators, a type of hunter so rare that most species considered them mythological. While other predators relied on speed or strength or stealth, the Terrans used endurance. They would chase their prey for hours, even days, never stopping, never resting, until their target collapsed from exhaustion. Then they would close in for the kill. This hunting strategy had shaped every aspect of their biology and psychology. Terrans could function without sleep for extended periods. They could survive injuries that would kill any other species. They could eat almost any organic matter without harm. They could adapt to almost any environment, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. They were, in every sense of the word, survivors. And they were aggressive beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Found records of the ancient wars. The Terrans had discovered space travel on their own, just as the humans had done. They had encountered the civilizations of that era and immediately begun to conquer them, not for resources or territory, but simply because that was their nature. They were apex predators, and they saw the entire galaxy as their hunting ground. The wars had lasted for centuries. The Terrans fought with primitive weapons against enemies with vastly superior technology. It should have been a quick and easy victory for the established powers. Instead, it became a nightmare. The Terrans would not stop. They could not be intimidated, could not be discouraged, could not be reasoned with. Every defeat only made them more determined. Every loss only taught them new tactics. They learned from their enemies, adapted their strategies, and came back stronger than before. 17 spacefaring civilizations had formed a coalition to stop them. They had gathered the greatest military force in galactic history and launched a coordinated assault on Terra Prime. The plan was simple: destroy the Terrans before they could spread any further. The assault failed. The coalition forces had bombarded the planet from orbit. They had deployed biological weapons designed to target Terran physiology. They had even attempted to alter the flow of time around the planet, hoping to trap the Terrans in an endless loop. Nothing worked. The Terrans survived. They always survived. In desperation, the coalition had used technology that no longer existed to seal Terra Prime behind an impenetrable barrier. All records of the planet's location were erased. All references to the Terrans were classified at the highest level. The survivors hoped that, trapped on their hostile world, the Terrans would eventually destroy themselves. Instead, they had simply started over. They had forgotten their own history among the stars and rebuilt their civilization from nothing. They had developed new technology, new culture, new dreams of reaching the heavens. And now they were back. Understood the terrible truth. The humans were not a harmless new species. They were the descendants of the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever known. They carried the legacy of the Terrans in their blood, in their bones, in every cell of their bodies. He had to warn the Council. Rushed from the library, his mind racing with fear and urgency. The galaxy had just welcomed the children of Terra Prime into its midst. It had given them technology, shown them kindness, and invited them to join the galactic community. It had made a terrible mistake. When the Galactic Council learned Earth's real name, fear gripped the galaxy. Part 3: The Truth Emerges. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called with less than 1 day's notice. Representatives who had been traveling in distant star systems dropped everything and rushed back to the Council. Ships of every design filled the space around the Great Hall, creating traffic problems that had not been seen in centuries. Everyone knew that something serious had happened. No one knew exactly what. When the delegates finally assembled, they found High Counselor waiting for them with an expression that his species had not displayed in living memory: fear. The ancient being floated above his crystalline podium and addressed the assembled representatives. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. What I am about to share with you will be difficult to hear. Some of you will not believe it at first. I ask that you withhold judgment until you have seen all the evidence. He activated the main display system. The chamber fell silent as historian. Findings were presented in precise, terrible detail. The delegates learned about Terra Prime. They learned about the Terrans. They learned about the ancient wars and the desperate measures that had been taken to contain the threat. And they learned that the humans were the direct descendants of those legendary monsters. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some delegates screamed in alarm. Others demanded that the information be by independent sources. A few simply fainted, their biological systems unable to process the shock. The chamber became a storm of voices speaking in hundreds of languages, all expressing the same emotion: pure, overwhelming terror. Admiral R of the Dominion Fleet was the first to regain his composure. He was a massive reptilian creature, covered in thick scales that had been hardened through centuries of combat experience. He had fought in 17 major conflicts and had never known fear. But even he felt cold when he looked at the images of ancient Terra Prime. "We must destroy them," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Immediately, before they realize what they are, before they remember their true nature." Ambassador rose to object. "We cannot simply destroy an innocent species because of what their ancestors did 200,000 years ago. The humans we encountered showed no signs of the aggression described in these records. They spoke of peace and cooperation. They committed no hostile acts." "Yet," Admiral R growled, "they committed no hostile acts yet, but their nature cannot be changed. They evolved on they are pursuit predators. These traits are written into their very biology." The The debate raged for hours. Some delegates agreed with the admiral, others sided with ambassador. Most simply did not know what to think. The evidence was clear, but its implications were too vast to easily comprehend. Finally, someone suggested that they ask the humans themselves. Commander was summoned to address the council. He arrived alone, having left his crew aboard their ship in orbit. As he walked through the great hall, he could feel thousands of eyes watching him. The atmosphere had changed completely from his first visit. Where there had been curious interest, now there was barely concealed hostility. Where there had been polite questions, now there was suspicious silence. He took his place on the central platform and waited for the council to explain why he had been called. High Counselor spoke carefully. "Commander, we have discovered some disturbing information about your species, information that was hidden in our oldest archives. We would like you to review this information and respond." Watched as the presentation played out before him, he saw the images of ancient Terra Prime. He read the descriptions of Terran biology and psychology. He learned about the wars his ancestors had fought and the atrocities they had committed. When it was finished, he stood in silence for a long moment. "Is this information accurate?" asked. Nodded slowly. "I cannot verify the specific events described here. Human history does not extend back 200,000 years, but the biological facts are correct. We are persistence hunters. We did evolve on what you call and yes, we have always been a violent species." The murmurs of fear grew louder throughout the chamber. But continued, raising his voice to be heard, "We have also changed. You speak of our ancestors as mindless predators driven only by aggression. That may have been true once, but it is not true now." Admiral R laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. "Changed? How does a species change its fundamental nature? You are what your evolution made you. Predators, hunters, killers." Met the Admiral's gaze without flinching. "We are what we choose to be. Yes, we carry the legacy of our ancestors. Yes, we have the capacity for violence that you fear. But we also have the capacity for love, for compassion, for self-sacrifice. We have spent thousands of years learning to control our darker impulses." He paused, looking around at the assembled delegates. "Do you want to know what makes humans truly dangerous? It is not our strength or our endurance or our aggression. It is our ability to learn, to adapt, to grow. Our ancestors may have been monsters, but we have learned from their mistakes. We have built a civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. We came to the stars seeking friendship, not dominion." "Words," the Admiral spat. "Pretty words from a predator trying to avoid being hunted." "Then test me," replied calmly. "Test us. Put us in situations where our true nature would reveal itself. Watch us. Study us. Judge us by our actions, not by the crimes of ancestors we never knew." The council deliberated for another 17 hours. Tempers flared. Accusations were made. Several delegates threatened to withdraw from the council entirely if the humans were not immediately expelled or destroyed. In the end, they reached a compromise. The humans would be allowed to remain in galactic society, but under strict conditions. Their technology would be limited to prevent them from becoming a military threat. Their movements would be monitored by council observers. Their population growth would be regulated. Any sign of aggression would be met with overwhelming force. Accepted the terms without complaint. "We will prove ourselves," he promised. "However long it takes, whatever it takes, we will earn your trust." As he left the chamber, he noticed a small group of delegates watching him with unusual intensity. They were reptilian creatures, similar in appearance to Admiral R but wearing different symbols on their uniforms. One of them, a massive specimen with ceremonial scars across his face, smiled in a way that seemed almost admiring. Did not know who they were. He did not know that they represented the Imperium, a military power that had long resented council authority. He did not know that they had been searching for weapons to use against their rivals. He did not know that they had just found one. When the Galactic Council learned Earth's real name, fear gripped the galaxy. Part 4: The Test. 3 years passed since the truth about Earth had been revealed to the galaxy. In that time, the humans worked hard to prove themselves worthy of trust. They followed every rule the Council imposed. They submitted to constant monitoring without complaint. They traded fairly, cooperated openly, and went out of their way to help species that had once feared them. Slowly, very slowly, attitudes began to change. Some species came to appreciate human creativity and their strange but effective way of solving problems. Others valued their reliability and their willingness to honor agreements. A few even began to seek out human partners for trade and cultural exchange. Lieutenant Commander Amy Price was one of the first humans to serve on a joint diplomatic mission. She was 34 years old, with short brown hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything. She had trained for years in xenobiology and communication. Her assignment was to help resolve a trade dispute between the two species with a long history of mutual distrust. The mission was a success. Amy listened to both sides with patience and respect. She found common ground where others had seen only conflict. She suggested solutions that benefited everyone. When the agreement was finally signed, both delegations praised her fairness and her skill. She was returning home aboard a diplomatic transport when everything changed. The attack came without warning. One moment, the transport was cruising peacefully through hyperspace. The next moment, it was torn out of the transit corridor by a massive gravity well. Amy was thrown from her seat as the ship shuddered, and alarms began to scream. Through the viewport, she could see alien warships emerging from behind a small moon. Their design was unfamiliar, but their intent was clear. Weapons charged with deadly light. The transport's escort vessels, two small Council patrol ships, moved to intercept. They were destroyed in seconds. The transport tried to flee, but its engines were damaged. Amy and the other passengers could only watch as the enemy ships closed in. A boarding tube attached to the hull with a sound like thunder. Armed figures poured into the corridors, shooting anyone who resisted. Amy was captured along with the surviving crew. They were dragged through the transport and onto the enemy vessel, where they were thrown into holding cells. Only then did Amy get a good look at their attackers. She recognized them from the briefing files she had studied before her mission. A warrior species, proud and aggressive, with a long history of conflict with the Galactic Council. They valued strength above all else and considered peace to be a sign of weakness. The cell door opened and a massive entered. He wore ceremonial armor covered in medals and scars. His eyes were cold and calculating, like a predator studying its prey. When he spoke, his voice was deep and commanding. "I am Lord of the Imperium. You are now my prisoners." Amy stood to face him, refusing to show fear. "This is an act of war. The Council will respond." Laughed. "The Council is weak. They talk while we act. By the time they respond, we will have what we came for." "And what is that?" The Lord leaned closer, his breath hot against Amy's face. "You, the humans, the children of Terra Prime," he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "We have studied your history. We know what your ancestors were capable of. That potential still lives in your blood. We intend to unlock it." Amy and the other human prisoners were taken to a training facility on a remote world. There, they were subjected to a series of brutal tests, combat simulations, endurance challenges, survival scenarios designed to push them to their absolute limits. They wanted to see the legendary Terran ferocity for themselves. They wanted to study human aggression, to understand how it worked, perhaps to replicate it in their own soldiers. They expected to find savage warriors barely contained by a thin layer of civilization. What they found surprised them. The humans did not rage. They did not lose control. Instead, they remained calm under pressure. thinking clearly even in the most desperate situations. They worked together with remarkable coordination, communicating through gestures and glances that the observers could barely detect. They protected each other with a fierce loyalty that went beyond anything they had ever seen. When one human was injured during a combat simulation, the others immediately adjusted their tactics to defend him. When they were separated and placed in isolation, they found ways to tap out coded messages through the walls. When they were given insufficient food, they shared what they had equally, ensuring that everyone remained strong enough to continue. Lord watched the recordings with growing unease. He had expected to find monsters. Instead, he had found something more dangerous. He had found a species that could endure any hardship, solve any problem, and overcome any obstacle through sheer determination and mutual support. He had found the species that had survived a. The captivity lasted for 3 months. During that time, Amy became the unofficial leader of the human prisoners. She kept their spirits up, planned their resistance, and never stopped looking for a way to escape. She lost 15 pounds, suffered numerous injuries, and barely slept. But she never gave up. The rescue came on the 93rd day. Captain Grant, now commanding the rebuilt Horizon's Edge, had tracked the vessel across half the galaxy. Working with Council intelligence agents, she had identified the location of the training facility. She led a strike team that included both human and alien soldiers, fighting through heavy resistance to reach the prisoners. Amy was almost unrecognizable when they found her. Her body was covered in bruises and half-healed wounds, but her eyes were still clear, still calm, still determined. When offered her hand, Amy took it firmly. "Took you long enough," she said and smiled. The rescue mission captured Lord and recovered evidence of the plot. When the information was presented to the Galactic Council, the reaction was immediate. The Imperium faced severe sanctions. Their military was reduced. Their leaders were placed under permanent surveillance. But more importantly, the galaxy had seen something that changed their perception of humanity forever. They had seen humans face the worst that could be thrown at them and refuse to break. They had seen the legendary Terran endurance put to the ultimate test. And they had seen that the children of Terra Prime were not monsters. They were survivors. They were protectors. They were something new. Something that could not be controlled. Something that could not be destroyed. Something that the galaxy would have to learn to live with. When the Galactic Council learned Earth's real name, fear gripped the galaxy. Part 5: The New Dawn. 5 years had passed since the first human ship entered galactic space. 5 years of suspicion, fear, testing, and slow, painful progress. 5 years that had changed both humanity and the galaxy forever. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled to capacity for the anniversary celebration. Representatives from over 4,000 species had gathered to witness a historic moment. The atmosphere was different from that first meeting 5 years ago, where there had been curiosity mixed with condescension. Now there was respect. Where there had been polite tolerance, now there was genuine warmth. High Counselor floated above his crystalline podium, his ancient form shimmering with colors that indicated deep emotion. He had lived for tens of thousands of years and had seen many things, but what he had witnessed in the past 5 years had surprised even him. "When we first encountered the humans," he began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber, "we saw there and we saw death. We saw their history and we saw violence. We saw their potential and we saw threat. We looked at their small bodies, their short lives, their primitive technology, and we dismissed them. We were wrong." The chamber was silent, every delegate listening intently. "Then we learned the truth about their origins. We discovered that they were the children of Terra Prime, that had produced the most feared warriors in galactic history. We looked at their heritage and we saw monsters. We looked at their biology and we saw predators. We looked at their ancestors and we saw conquerors. Again, we were wrong." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. The humans are indeed the children of a. They carry the legacy of the Terrans in their blood, but they have done something that we did not think possible. They have taken the traits that made their ancestors feared and transformed them into something beautiful. Admiral stood among the human delegation on the main floor. He was no longer a young commander nervously making first contact. He was now a seasoned leader, his hair touched with, his face lined with the experience of countless challenges overcome. Beside him stood Amy Price, fully recovered from her ordeal and now serving as Earth's official ambassador to the Council. Behind them were dozens of other humans who had helped build bridges between species over the past 5 years. Their endurance has become patience, continued. Their aggression has become determination. Their pack loyalty has become compassion that extends beyond their own kind. They are still the children of Terra Prime, but they have chosen to be something more. The High Counselor gestured toward a display that showed images from the past 5 years. Humans working alongside aliens to rebuild a world devastated by natural disaster. Human doctors treating patients of species they had never encountered before. Human engineers solving problems that had stumped galactic scientists for centuries. Human diplomats bringing peace to conflicts that had lasted for generations. We have watched them carefully as they agreed we could. We have tested them as they asked us to. And what we have discovered has forced us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about them. Ambassador of the Rose to speak. She was one of the first aliens to have welcomed the humans, and she had become one of their strongest supporters. I have worked with humans for 5 years now. I have seen them at their best and at their worst. I have seen them tired, frustrated, frightened, and angry. Not once have I seen them abandon a friend. Not once have I seen them break a promise. Not once have I seen them give up when the situation seemed hopeless. She turned to face the human delegation directly. The ancient Terrans were feared because they would never stop fighting. The modern humans are admired because they never stop trying to help, trying to understand, trying to connect. They approach friendship with the same determination that their ancestors approached war. The vote was called. One by one, the species of the Galactic Council registered their decision. When the final count was announced, the result was unanimous. Earth was granted full membership in the Galactic Assembly. For the first time in 200,000 years, the children of Terra Prime would take their rightful place among the stars. Admiral stepped forward to address the assembly. His voice was calm and steady, but it carried the weight of everything humanity had endured to reach this moment. Our ancestors made terrible mistakes, he said. They let their strength become cruelty. They let their determination become domination. They used their gifts to take from others rather than to give. We have spent learning from those mistakes. We have fought among ourselves, nearly destroyed ourselves, and slowly, painfully, learned to be better. He looked out at the thousands of faces watching him, alien faces that had once looked upon humanity with fear and suspicion. We do not claim to be perfect. We never will be. We carry our violent history within us, and we always will. But we also carry the capacity for growth, for change, for redemption. We are not defined by what our ancestors did. We are defined by what we choose to do. He paused, gathering himself for what came next. The ancient galaxy feared our name. They called our world Terra Prime. They called our ancestors monsters. They tried to destroy us, and when they could not, they tried to forget us. But we survived. We always survive, and now we have returned. Amy Price stepped up beside him, taking his hand in a gesture of solidarity. We make you this promise, continued. Humanity will use our gifts for the good of all. We will protect the weak. We will stand against tyranny. We will never abandon an ally. And we will never, ever stop trying to build a better future for everyone. He took a deep breath. You learned our world's ancient name, and you were afraid. You called us the children of death, but we have another name for our home. We call it Earth. And in our oldest languages, that word means ground, foundation, the place where things grow. We are not the children of death. We are the children of Earth, and we are here to help the galaxy grow." The applause that followed was the loudest in the history of the Galactic Council. It came from beings of every shape and size, from creatures of crystal and energy and flesh and light. It echoed through the great hall and out into the space beyond, a sound of welcome and acceptance that had been 200,000 years in the making. In the years that followed, humanity faced many more challenges. There were conflicts and setbacks, misunderstandings and tragedies. Not everyone accepted the new order. Not every wound healed quickly, but the foundation had been laid. The children of Terra Prime had returned to the stars, and this time they came not as conquerors but as partners, not as predators but as protectors, not as monsters but as friends. The galaxy had learned Earth's real name, and yes, for a time fear had gripped them all, but fear, like all things, could be transformed into respect, into friendship, into hope. The humans had proven that, and they would keep proving it for as long as the stars continued to shine.